Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, you're still not good enough? That despite all those sleepless nights studying and all the promises you made to yourself, this time I'll get it right, you still failed? What if I told you that failure isn't the end, but the beginning? That the greatest people in history didn't succeed because they never stumbled, but because they refused to stay down. In today's episode of Kunzy Podcast English, we're going to explore a story that will change the way you see failure forever. This is How to Overcome Failure, Never Give Up. And by the time this episode ends, you'll realize that your true strength doesn't come from always winning. It comes from never giving up. Welcome to Kunzy Podcast English, where every story helps you grow in both English and in life. Have you ever seen a girl who looked completely ordinary on the outside, but behind those quiet eyes, a whole world was falling apart? She doesn't cry out. She doesn't blame anyone. But if you look closely, you'll realize she's fighting a silent battle with something most people are terrified of: failure. This story doesn't begin with glory. It begins with cracks, tiny ones, that slowly break the heart of a young soul trying desperately to find her place. Her name is Annia, 16 years old. She lives in a tiny village nestled between misty hills where time seems to move slower. Her family is poor. So poor that when winter arrives, she wears a patched-up coat from years past. There's no internet in her house. Her textbooks are hand-me-downs, faded and torn. And yet, somehow, this girl carries a dream. Not to be rich, not to be famous, but simply to make her parents proud. So she studies. She studies like the future depends on every single page. While others sleep, she reads. While others play, she rewrites notes. And still, exam after exam, all she gets are red marks and silent sighs from her teachers. Her classmates, the ones who barely try, always top the charts. And Annia, always at the bottom. She starts to wonder, am I just not smart enough? Was I never meant to succeed? Each time she holds another disappointing test result, that tiny dream inside her dims a little more. She isn't afraid of being poor. She's afraid of being stuck in a loop of endless failure, trying and failing again and again, like some invisible hand is holding her back. But there's something Annia doesn't know yet. Just when she thinks she's hit rock bottom, another door is quietly unlocking. Someone is about to step in. A story is about to be told. It will change everything she thought she knew about failure. That afternoon, the sky wasn't bright, nor was it raining. It was simply quiet, a dull shade of gray, as if the universe itself had paused to listen to the silent ache of a girl on the edge of giving up. Annia sat on the porch, frozen, eyes locked on a stack of rejection letters and failed test scores. There were no more tears left to cry, just an emptiness so sharp it almost burned. And then behind her came a gentle voice. "Come take a walk with me, dear." She didn't ask why. Annia simply stood up. The two of them walked slowly down the dusty path that led past the garden, past the old well, past the purple wildflowers dancing in the breeze, until they reached it. The ancient tree that stood alone in the open field, towering, gnarled, silent. A tree that had watched generations grow and fall. And now it would witness something else. A moment that would change the way one girl saw her entire life. Her grandmother lowered herself onto the ground, leaning against the wide trunk, and gently patted the grass beside her. Annia sat down quietly. At first, there was silence, not heavy, but full of something unspoken. Then, in a low and steady voice, warm like a fading memory, her grandmother began. You know, when I was your age, I used to think I was a failure too. Annia turned toward her, startled. Never had she imagined that this strong woman, the pillar of their family, the calm in every storm, had once felt the same hopelessness. But her grandmother's eyes weren't looking at her. They were staring into a distant time, into a version of herself that no one else had ever seen. She continued, slowly but with quiet power. I dreamed of becoming a doctor. That dream burned so brightly inside me. I thought if I didn't reach it, my life wouldn't matter. But I failed, miserably. Annia didn't move. She barely even breathed. Each word her grandmother spoke seemed to peel back a layer of the image she had always held of her, not to weaken it, but to reveal something deeper, a truth hidden in the roots of every strong person. They were once broken too. And there, beneath that tree, an old chapter was unfolding, not to reopen old wounds, but to awaken something new in Annia, a quiet realization beginning to stir. Failure isn't the end. Sometimes it's life's way of saying, sit down, child. Let me tell you another story. A different one. One that starts with you and a brand new chapter. The breeze whispered gently through the branches above, brushing against the faces of the two sitting beneath the tree. Her grandmother's eyes looked far beyond the fields, far beyond the mountains, into a time long gone. Her voice, when it came, was soft but anchored in something deep and immovable. When I was your age, I had a dream too. A big one. I wanted to become a doctor. Not to be rich, not to be praised, but to help the people in our village. I had seen too many of them suffer in silence, lying on beds with no medicine, no treatment, no chance. And I used to think, if only I could do something, anything. Annia leaned in, drawn deeper with every word. It was strange. The woman she had known her whole life now seemed both familiar and distant, like a character from a story she'd never heard. Her grandmother continued, slowly, like peeling back the layers of an old diary. But we were poor, Annia. So poor that dinner was often just boiled greens. Books were borrowed and falling apart, and I studied by the dim flicker of a kerosene lamp. Still, I refused to give up. Every night, I studied until my eyes burned and my hands ached. I kept telling myself just a little more, just one more night closer to that dream. There were days I almost quit, she admitted. My friends dropped out one by one to take jobs and support their families, and I wondered if maybe I should do the same, but I couldn't, because that dream, that vision of saving lives, wasn't just a wish. It was the only light I had in the darkest days of my youth. Annia swallowed hard, her heart full, her voice silent. Something was shifting inside her, something fragile but real. A strange mix of sadness, admiration, and hope. A tiny spark, flickering in the ruins of her self-doubt. Her grandmother had once been just like her, dreaming, struggling, exhausted. But she didn't stop, and maybe, just maybe, Annia shouldn't give up so easily either. Her grandmother paused. Her eyes weren't looking at the present anymore. They were fixed on a memory far away, one that had never been spoken aloud. Eventually, I passed the graduation exams, she began, her voice softer now. My scores weren't outstanding, but they were enough to apply for medical school in the city. A faint smile crossed her lips, part wistful, part ironic. I left our village with nothing but hope in my bag and fire in my chest, believing I could change everything. But reality doesn't always welcome dreamers with open arms. The entrance exam, one single test that determined your entire future, hit harder than she'd imagined. She failed. Not narrowly, not because of a small mistake. She failed completely. It was like falling from a mountain and hitting the ground face first. Every sleepless night, every ounce of belief I carried, shattered into a cold, merciless number on a results sheet. She walked the streets of the city with the failure letter crumpled in her hand, the weight of it crushing her from the inside. What she had imagined to be a city of opportunity now felt like a place of ridicule. Instead of encouragement, she heard whispers, quiet, cutting, cruel. That village girl? She really thought she could become a doctor? They didn't have to say much. Their looks said enough. I didn't dare call home, she said, her voice trembling now. I didn't dare meet anyone's eyes. I felt useless, like I hadn't just failed myself, but had disgraced my entire family. She clenched her fingers slightly. Do you know that feeling, Annia? When you believe in something so deeply, and life slaps you in the face and says, "You're not worthy?" Annia didn't speak. She couldn't. She had never imagined her grandmother, the rock of their family, had once been so defeated. And yet that very vulnerability made her more powerful, more human, more real than ever. And something inside Annia shifted again. Because this story wasn't over yet. When she returned home, no one asked her anything. No accusations, no anger, but the silence, it was louder than words. She hid in her room, shrinking into herself, trying to bury her shame beneath the blanket of quiet tears and muffled breaths. Then her father, Annia's great-grandfather, entered the room. A simple man, uneducated but unshakably wise. He sat beside her bed, not touching her, not rushing her. His voice, deep and calm, cut through the heaviness in the air like a steady flame in the dark. You failed, didn't you? He said gently, not expecting an answer. But listen, child, failure isn't when you fall. Failure is when you refuse to rise again. Those words, so plain, so unadorned, echoed louder than any lecture or comfort ever could. They weren't meant to soothe. They were meant to awaken. She looked up into her father's eyes. For the first time in days, she didn't see disappointment. She saw a flicker, small but unmistakable, of strength, of hope. You have the right to cry, to hurt, to be disappointed, he continued. But you do not have the right to quit, because if you quit that dream of becoming a doctor, it becomes nothing more than a fantasy. And so, from the ashes of failure, she started again. Not for grades, not for recognition, but for the truth behind her father's words, that only those who dare to rise after the fall are truly walking the path they were meant to take. Though her heart was still wounded, she chose to return to the city, to face her greatest fear, the exam she had once failed. Once again, she walked into that testing room. Her heartbeat roared in her chest, her hands trembled holding the pen, and again she failed. But this time, she didn't cry. She didn't hide. She simply whispered to herself, "Next time, I'll do better." And she did. She studied. She tested. She failed again. People laughed. Some gave up, but not her. Every failure taught her something. About herself, about the world, about resilience. One day she asked one of the examiners, "Am I just not smart enough?" The man paused, then replied, "You have fire in you. But maybe the path you're meant for isn't written in test scores." That sentence didn't crush her spirit. It opened a new door in her mind. Maybe being a doctor wasn't the only way to heal others, and so she shifted paths. She began studying nursing. At first, people said it was a step down, but she didn't waver. She poured her heart into every lesson, every patient. Over time, she became the most trusted nurse in a small-town hospital. No fancy white coat, no high status. But to the patients, she was the one they counted on in their darkest hours. She once believed that to fulfill her dream, she had to become a doctor. But in the end, it wasn't about the title. It was about the heart you put into the work. And in that, she succeeded beyond what she ever imagined. Not because she was the smartest, but because she never gave up. The sun was fading. Its last golden rays slipped through the thick leaves of the old tree, casting long shadows over two silhouettes, one elderly, one young, sitting quietly as if time itself had paused to listen. No more birdsong, no rustling wind. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows something important, a story that sinks deeper than words. Annia sat still. Her fingers clenched the crumpled test letter so tightly it almost tore. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't even angry. Something had shifted. It wasn't understanding, not yet. But deep within her, something had stirred, like a quiet river running beneath the earth, invisible yet powerful. Her grandmother reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind Annia's ear before gently holding her hand. Those old hands, etched with time and memory, held no judgment, no pity, only something far more powerful, belief. A silent belief that wrapped around Annia like a blanket against the cold. "Annia," her grandmother said, voice soft like wind through leaves. "Failure is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign you're still alive. It means you are walking a path that is real, one with risk, pain, and truth." Annia looked up. Those words hit something inside her. When did she start believing that only those who never stumble are worthy? When did she forget that falling down is part of the path? Not a detour, but the path itself. Failure, her grandmother continued, is a mirror. It reflects your effort. Every time you get back up, it's a message to the world. I haven't given up yet. Still, Annia said nothing, but her eyes changed. Not brightly, not dramatically, just a quiet flicker, a tiny flame that hadn't been there before. "Do you know what real failure is, my dear?" her grandmother asked gently, squeezing her hand. "It's when people stop trying, when they believe the lie that they aren't good enough. But you're still learning, you're still moving, and that alone makes you extraordinary." The words echoed in Annia's chest like a bell. Something rose inside her. Not a burst of courage, not yet, but a whisper, a promise. Maybe I'm not done. Maybe there's still a chance. The next morning, Annia woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the window, landing gently on her face, like the world itself was whispering, "Today is different." But the real change wasn't in the light. It was in her eyes. No longer clouded by fatigue or hopelessness, they now held a quiet strength, calm yet certain. Something had shifted inside her after the conversation with her grandmother. The old stories spoken beneath the ancient tree had planted a seed deep in her heart. And that seed, once just hope, was now sprouting into something stronger. Belief. She now understood. Failure wasn't a stain or a dead end. It was a mirror. Every time she looked into it, she didn't just see her mistakes. She saw a version of herself still becoming. And for the first time, instead of asking, "Why me?" she asked, "What did this teach me?" Annia sat down at her desk with a fresh notebook. Not to study out of fear of bad grades, but because she genuinely wanted to learn. She wanted to grow. The first thing she wrote on the page was her grandmother's words. "Failure is not the end. It's a stepping stone to learning, growth, and eventually success." That sentence wasn't just ink on paper anymore. It lived inside her now. In the days that followed, Annia didn't become a genius overnight, but she began to shift piece by piece. When she got questions wrong, she didn't give up. When others excelled, she didn't compare. She kept going, quietly, consistently, because now she knew persistence is the key that unlocks her true potential. And the most beautiful part, she was no longer afraid to fail, because to her, failure no longer meant falling. It meant moving forward, just not perfectly yet. There are moments in life when we feel like we're slowly drowning, not because we're not trying, but because the world feels too fast, too cruel. Annia was once that kind of girl, a young student who studied hard, but the results never reflected her efforts. To others, she was a failure. But deep in her heart, she carried a quiet dream to make her parents proud, to rise above poverty, to reach for a life that felt worthy. How many of us have felt like Annia? Like no matter how hard we try, we're always falling behind. Like everyone else seems to win at life effortlessly, while we struggle just to stay afloat. But then something magical happens. Not a miracle, but a simple moment. A conversation. A walk with her grandmother. A story that lit a fire in the middle of Annia's storm. Her grandmother's story wasn't about instant success. It was filled with failure. Rejected exams, mockery from strangers, lonely nights in a big city. But what made her story powerful was not the ending. It was the refusal to give up. She didn't get into medical school, but she didn't let her dream die. She turned that dream into action. She became a nurse and ended up saving more lives than she ever imagined. From that story, Annia learned a powerful truth. Failure doesn't define you. Your response to failure does. Every fall is not weakness. It is a stepping stone. Every tear is part of the journey. Every setback, a lesson. Sometimes the only thing we need is someone to remind us. You are not useless. You're just becoming something greater. If you're listening right now and you see yourself in Annia, take a moment. Breathe. Ask yourself, have I truly failed, or am I just catching my breath? Exhaustion is not weakness. It's proof you're trying. Don't let fatigue make you forget how far you've come. Don't let the pain make you doubt your purpose. Never let judgment kill your dreams. Never let a few stumbles silence your courage. The road is hard, yes, but only those who keep walking will see the sunrise. Give yourself that second chance, and third, and fourth, because every time you rise again, you grow stronger. As Annia's grandmother said, failure is not when you fall. It's when you refuse to rise. So today, let that truth sink into your soul. Stand up no matter how many times you've fallen, whether you're 16 or 61, whether you're a student, a parent, or someone trying to rebuild your life. It is never too late to learn, to rise, and to begin again. Never stop learning and never stop rising. If this story touched your heart, let it spread. Somewhere out there, another Annia needs this spark. Like this episode if it gave you value. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And most importantly, subscribe to Kunzy Podcast English, where real stories meet real people and where hope always finds its way back.